Welcome to episode 3 of The Arc-Aholics, an Arc Raiders-centric podcast where we discuss all things Arc Raiders related, as well as other extraction shooter topics. All creator guests have their channels and socials linked in the description below, and I highly encourage you to check them out. Feel free to leave it running in the background, or enjoy the mid-game play. Now, on with the show.
All right, joining us this week for the third Arc-Aholics podcast is Gecko from YouTube's The Gecko Frontier.
Happy to be here.
Tactical Ned has been banned from the show for crimes that he knows he committed, and we're all very disappointed in him. But last but not least is Rockhoundblack. Rockhoundblack, welcome.
Thanks, men in boxes. It's great to be back. And what were the crimes committed, just so I can make sure I don't do the same?
We'll get pulled off the air if I explain the crimes. Oh, he knows it and I know it, but you know that's for another time. That's for court.
They sound interesting.
Gentlemen, Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Fate cannot give you a challenge that nature has not equipped you to bear." Gecko, yesterday Jeff Keighley was supposed to shadow drop the Arc Raiders open beta, but because we live in the darkest timeline, he did not. How are you feeling, Gecko?
Conflicted. Disappointed would be definitely a word I would use, but I don't think there's anybody who's not, in terms of the reactions. I think even the most positive individuals would be dishonest if they said they were disappointed they were not given something more. I think anyone can just say, hey, at the very least, release a little sooner, but it's I think disappointed would be the word. I'm not crushed like a lot of the subreddit currently is right now, but that probably sums it up.
That's fair. Rockhoundblack, what about you?
Yeah, I think my sentiment's pretty similar. I would say I'm not crushed, but at the same time, Embark in the past have said that their playtests aren't a marketing beat. Of all times where they should have had a playtest that was a marketing beat, this was the time to do a marketing beat playtest. So I think they had a misstep there for sure, but not crushed, just disappointed.
Just disappointed. Yeah, I guess for me, I always try to look at the silver lining, and I always what I'm taking away from that is like how powerful cope, like the will to want to believe in something. I've been checking the subreddit for the last few weeks, and I've been believing all the like, oh, they're about to shadow drop it, and I feel like I got to self-reflect, and I have to say, the when you want to believe something, you're willing to trick yourself into it, right?
Yeah, I think there's a big difference though between like shadow dropping the game, as a release. I think people were probably way too hopeful, thinking that might happen. I had no expectation that they would shadow drop the game in its entirety. I certainly expected to get at least a date for an upcoming playtest, and even if it was a month away, I would have been super happy with that. I would have been great. We've got a playtest date and a release date.
Yeah, that's for sure. Gecko, were you able to take anything positive out of about the Summer Game Fest announcement?
Well, I mean, for sure. I think the trailer itself gave us indications of additional content coming our way. We know for sure. Well, in quotes, for sure, that there's going to be a new map. There's a new arc that we can kind of readily see within those trailers that we've never seen before. So that's exciting. That's the positive, I think, from that. I think with regards to kind of like lying to yourself and believing it, I feel like there's a mixed relationship when it comes to people's takes on what they were expecting to happen versus what did happen. And I think even Embark realizes that, because they have that Discord response to the disappointment, the overwhelmingly negative vibe that a lot of online currently is going through right now. And I think it's a lot of maturity and really good marketing in terms of like owning what hey, you know what, we'll own our part in this process in terms of like leading people on in terms of what could potentially happen. But it's one of those things where getting over that, firstly, for one, it's 6 months from now. Some people will say, well, it's 5 or 4, whatever it is. We're at the beginning of June. The release date's the end of October, so it's effectively 6 months. Hate to, extend that even further for people in people's minds, but it is what it is. But like Rockhound said,
sorry to interrupt, but it is actually 5 months.
It is 5.
It's 5.
It's
5.
Yeah. 6 months from the tech test. 6 months from the
tech test. Excuse me. Yeah. So 5 months.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Math is not my strong suit. I was infantry, not a desk jockey. But like Rockhound was saying, is that had they given us even probably a morsel of something else, I think people would have been happy. And I think I'm not sure if we discussed this last week, but I believe, if I'm paraphrasing, or maybe I'm even misremembering, but I believe Rockhound was saying that one of the worst case scenarios that could have happened is we just got a trailer and that would be it. And effectively, that's what we got. That's what we got.
He talked it into an existence.
Thanks, Rockhound. This is your fault.
We got one step beyond that, which was the release date. And I think there's probably two groups of people right now. There will definitely be a group of people who discovered Arc Raiders for the first time yesterday and are over the moon that there is an amazing game coming in 5 months' time. And they would have watched some videos about it and gone, hey, I haven't even seen this game before. This looks amazing. Everyone's raving about it. I'm delighted. So there'll be that portion, which we can't forget about. But then there's the portion of people where all the hype was built up previously, and completely understandably, those guys are super disappointed, because what are they going to do in the next 5 months? They haven't got anything to look forward to between now and the end of October. And the thing that really surprises me is that Embark Studios have been super nimble about doing stuff in the past, like making changes to the game, kind of reading the community pretty well and making changes to it, or fixing mistakes pretty quickly. But it surprised me that they didn't see what the community vibe was leading up to this and go, hey, we actually need to change our marketing plan here, because we've got this group of people that are absolutely hyped beyond belief. They want to get access to the game soon. Maybe we need to come up with a marketing beat style playtest that we're going to do and just give them a date for it. And even if it's only 3 days long, in the middle of the 5 months, at least we give them something and show them that we see them. Yeah. And I think they kind of didn't show that they saw this group of people and heard what they were saying. It's almost like they went, okay, they're there, but we're not going to change our marketing plans at all, and we're just going to stick to it and kind of ignore the vibe.
It's extremely well put, I think. And you can even take this a step further by utilizing both one group in the service of the other, in the sense that you could be cool. We're going to have this marketing, essentially this beta test, but only the people who got access to it before have it, but we're going to give you friend keys. Right? And so you could really kind of just jive up that excitement of people who are already excited. But now you have the additional factor of like, I'm going to try to bring as many as my friends on board to this hype train as I possibly can. Right. And so, and what's the difference as well is that the individuals who just discovered the game because they were watching, the Summer Games Fest, and the Arc Raiders was like, hey, what's this game about? Because there were plenty of those games that I had the feeling on when I was watching Summer Games Fest. Hey, what's this game about? And sure enough, I've got a couple of extra wish list items now because of that. So Arc Raiders could very well be that for somebody else. But the benefit they have is that right now they can go through a library of videos and content. Fast forward 4 months, that's not going to be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I guess
it kind of makes me.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, you go on, men in boxes.
Well, I guess when Bungie announced their little we're gonna have an hour-long event for Marathon. Like, I felt like that was such a beautiful way to show off a big game like this. And like Rockhoundblack was saying, it's like if they just said, hey, in 90 days we're gonna have a big 45-minute event to kind of really go into detail with this game, I feel like people would have been happy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To
give us something to look forward to, right? Anything, even if it's just a series of developer videos, like they did a couple, I think, for the finals, where it's like how the game's being developed, behind the scenes stuff. If they'd given us that, at least it would have been something to fill in the gap, or for us to feel like we have something to look forward to that's not 5 months away.
For sure. And I think also, we have to kind of speak to the elephant in the room when it comes to creating a possible what ifs and this and that and the other. The countdown was a huge misstep for them, I think. because I believe that was the one thing that they did that they completely can be culpable for in terms of raising expectations beyond of what they were going to deliver. I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of this could have been nixed if they simply did not have that portion of it, right? So if they did not have the countdown, anybody currently saying you hyped yourself up would be perfectly justified saying that. However, because they have that, that was a huge piece of evidence that we were going to get something on that yesterday.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
putting a pin in that real quick in terms of what else we could have gotten that would have appeased us, I think the most important thing to take away from that one is that not to put secret countdowns in your exe files and to kind of give you the illusion of something big happening when you weren't going to deliver.
Or to make it more obvious as to what is being delivered. I
Correct.
think yesterday I sort of did a watch party. I think you did as well, Gecko, for the event. And afterwards I said, the analogy is like if you go to a hairdresser and let's say you've got to be there, you're getting your hair colored or something and you've got to be there for an hour and a half or whatever. And they're a great hairdresser. They give you a great haircut and they give you a coffee for free during the haircut and the coffee is terrible. You come away from that not going, hey, that hairdresser's amazing. They do great haircuts. You go, that's the hairdresser that does bad coffee.
Yeah.
And even though the coffee was free, it doesn't match the rest of the product that's being presented, but it's counted as part of the product. And so that little .exe file that was put in, it was a mismatch to what the rest of the marketing package was because it gave people the wrong expectations, right? We all expected that it was a countdown to something really exciting, not just a date, right? Even if it wasn't the release of the game.
Let me push back on what you just said, though. Is there any way, the old adage, no publicity is bad publicity? Is there a chance that Embark is like secretly smiling behind the scenes? Like, we whipped up a hornet's nest, like this is actually going according to plan? Do you agree that that's possible?
I guess my question would be, how is the hornet's nest attracting new players? Would be my question.
Yeah. All right. I would answer being like, well, it's just like it's a new talking point. Like if you're like on the periphery of like a potential Arc Raiders, if you haven't heard of it yet, but that could be you, and you're just hearing a group of people who are like pissed off, then you're just gonna want to like focus your attention over there, right? I don't know.
Maybe
this
not.
Could be coping as well. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not.
I guess the thing, if I hear a bunch of people talking about a game in a negative way universally, my immediate reaction is probably not to check that game out. But here's the thing.
Also,
yeah.
I was just going to add to that. It also people coming into it, say the Reddit for the first time, might even go, "Wow, this community doesn't have a positive vibe at all. Why would I want to hang out here?" Not that that's the community's fault. It's just they're in the moment. But for new players coming in, it's like it certainly sends a message about what the community's like as far as they view it.
For sure, you're seeing it as a spike right now. But I think to answer your question, Box, is that I feel like if they felt that way, they wouldn't have felt the need to do an apology message on their Discord, which everyone kind of seems circulate at this point. Completely like owning their portion of the responsibility. They're taking responsibility like adults do. So I feel like if that was the plan, if that was what they were doing, they wouldn't have bothered doing that. So I don't think it was the plan. I think they legitimately go, okay, we need to, our fault or not, we need to put out a message saying mea culpa.
Look, you guys could absolutely be right. But I think of the adage, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. And they don't have indifference right now, So, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, you can see, they're passionate. The community's passionate because they were super hyped, right?
Right.
That hype has just been converted to disappointment for the moment. I think the one thing to remember, though, is that as much as people are disappointed, the quality of the game hasn't changed.
True. Very true.
So the community have to come back to that at some point and go, well, even though I was angry, the game's not bad now. It's exactly the same. In fact, it's going to be improved within 5 months. So how can you not get over that? I mean, if you can't get over that, then I think that's more of a maturity thing than a problem with Embark.
100%.
Well, and I do think it's also interesting how like so many comments. So I didn't. You obviously you two played the tech test too. I didn't play it, but so many comments online were like, "This game's polished. It feels ready to go. Like let's go." So I think it's interesting to think about. Okay, they're taking 6 months from tech test 2 to release. It's like, what are they doing in that 6 months? A lot can get done by a talented developer in 6 months, right?
Well, if I can probably speak this, and probably Rockhound will back me up on this. Is that the difference between the October play test and the last tech test was leagues of difference. So they can do a lot in 6 months.
Yeah.
How long?
Yeah,
how long was the space between the first two?
6 months.
Oh, it was 6 months. Okay.
Between these two, but there was a alpha, which we can't go into the details of that because it's still under NDA. But that was the one in
October. It was still in the NDA, and I can't tell you like what was in it, but it was just one of those things where, I just for sure when you're asking the question, how much can they do in 6 months? Well, the difference between the two play tests were night and day, and I can tell you, yeah, they can do a lot in 6 months.
Right.
Yes. But there was a playtest before that, and so
that was like
alpha,
a year and a half at that point.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. There was a big improvement over that 6 months. So that exactly, they can do a lot in that time.
Well, I guess I like to think about the silver linings in it. And Gecko, you're not going to like it when I say this, but that October 30th date instantly made me think of what's happening on September 23rd. And I'm like, okay, that's going to make the wait a little bit longer. And that's obviously September 23rd is Marathon's release. So I feel like we have a little lifeboat that's hopefully will take us to the grand entrance of, what we're hoping turns into a great game, right?
I hope so. I'm skeptical about that. I think I've voiced that a bit on various different videos and on the podcast here. But I think we have plenty of other games between now and then to kind of hold us over. But in terms of the potential of what Arc Raiders can do in 6 months, I think one of the concerns that I've voiced before here is that what the end game looks like in terms of the end game supposedly, I talked about clans as my kind of ideal situation, but ultimately people will talk about, is there enough content? Now, I imagine, let's imagine that they planned for a roughly October release to begin with, and then the tech test happened and it goes over swimmingly, it goes great. And let's say they do what everybody wants them to do right now, which is to release the game right now, or at the very least have a beta test or whatever. But they have the content drip feed for the live service of this game already kind of set to begin as of October. So in theory, they're not going to be able to speed that up because they weren't planning on it. They're trying to polish the game off. And so in theory, we could potentially have a very big gap between, the launch of the game and any kind of degree of first levels of content release. I've seen games die in that span of time before. So maybe it's wiser for them to hold off. So when they've fully released, they've got all their ducks in a row. So that way they can consistently strip feed us content. So we're completely satisfied with the experience from the release to all the way to years to come potentially.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were saying, "Oh, the game's ready to go right now." In fact, I'd mentioned in videos that I didn't think it was ready to go. I think there were changes that needed to be made to things like the UI, various bugs and so on to sort out. Only the devs know what amount of content is going into the game, and even though the community is already satisfied with the level of content that they perceive to be in there, the devs may go, well, actually, you're in for a big surprise because you've only seen a tiny portion of what actually is going to be in the game, but we need until October to do that.
Right.
And absolutely, we all know that there's absolutely a honeymoon period with games. So just because a game is fun for 4 days for a lot of people doesn't mean it's going to be fun in 2 months, right? So you're right. That tail, tail, we haven't seen the tail yet, and that's super important for these types of games.
Yeah, especially extraction shooters.
Personally, I think we've probably only seen the tip of the iceberg, to sort of mix up our metaphors, but I think they have hidden a lot from us. That's my hunch, but they're still working on that large amount of content and need the time. So I remember someone commented that the game we would have played in the tech test was going to be an older build, so they actually had time between completing that build and the tech test to make additional changes, which is kind of true. But also we got to remember that the devs got a huge amount of information out of the tech test and will make changes based on that. And they didn't have that information until the tech test was completed. So they couldn't have made those changes before the tech test because they didn't know what the changes were going to be.
Right. With that in mind, I'd like to shift gears a little bit actually with this question. This was rattling around my head the week prior, and so I was wanted to get somebody's take on this. So one of the biggest criticisms that the tech test got was like the armor balance. And for me, I think one of the major issues that was occurring was that obviously it was set up economically, and in terms of potency, that the heavy armor was the best and the light armor was the worst, right? But these are obviously different rarities. You know, light armor being green, medium armor being blue, heavy armor being purple, and they even commented there'd be like legendary armor. Lord knows what that would be. Like, what if, right? What if? Hear me out. All of these armors had their own like gray, green, blue, and purple versions. But if they would let players play with them all, they'd only hit people automatically gravitating towards heavy and from the very start, and they wouldn't get a lot of complete data.
Yeah. I kind of like that idea, actually. I think that's good. And in fact, it was interesting when the design director, Shy, was playing with Clean for a few hours on Clean stream. And Shy actually said he uses medium armor because he doesn't want to take the hit on sprinting speed and so on. And he preferred to be more nimble. But I think it would be good to have the armors as almost being like skill tree choices where you can like even develop them a bit in a certain direction, but they have certain features that are more favorable for one thing over another. So if you want to be light and fast, light is actually good and can be developed. And if you just want to carry or have a heap of defensive ability, then heavy is the way to go. So yeah, I really like that idea.
So I think that might be, and I guess it's like tinfoil hat theory type situation where it's like if they structured it as it was, they would get lobbies full of mixed results in terms of like mixed players with like light armor, mixed players with medium armor and heavy armor, and also different levels of potency. Because in theory, if this was true, you could have purple light armor. Whatever that would look like, it's going to look like. But in terms of a lobby, like, hey, in terms of matchmaking and gear and viability, what would it look like if we have players that have purple heavy versus like green light or blue mediums? What is that fight? What are those fights going to look like? And this tech test might have given them those numbers that they need.
And that info could be conveyed when you hit someone, like maybe the sparks that come off them have a color to them. So immediately if you hit them and there's a purple color comes off them, you're like, I don't want to actually be involved in this fight anymore. I'm going to bail out of it and try and escape because this is a mismatch. Yeah. Or the opposite, you might go, green came off, so I'm definitely going to push this player and see if I can immediately try and take them out.
Or the opposite effect could happen is that the same thing that happened in the Cycle Frontier is that the moment you realized they had good gear, you wanted to fight them because it was worth the payoff.
Yeah, exactly. It's worth the risk, right? Yeah. I think it's a good idea.
Guys, my hype level for Arc Raiders just increased over the last 120 seconds because with PvP games, one thing I think is a huge problem is the best players in a lobby, they have every advantage at the book. Like they have the most health, they have the most ammo, they're the fastest players. And I feel like balancing that to me it's very interesting. I'm a slower player, so yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah, I think anything that gives players agency to choose the style that they want to play, whether you want to play like a rat and be, hardly ever into fights, or you're just constantly running towards gunshots. I think anything that lends to that improves the game.
Right.
For
yeah,
sure.
I watch a ton of videos of animals trying to eat turtles, but they can't because, that shell. And I enjoy that. So that's good to hear. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. But it's
go ahead.
But it's one of those things where like I can remember when my initial reaction to it was my issue wasn't that the armors were imbalanced per se. It was just that there was a lack of variety and obvious endgame like viability of certain types of playstyles. And so that was my main issue. So people could say, hey, well, the heavy armor is distinctly better than the green armor. Well, it should be. It's like 30 times the cost. So you know, whatever. But like, what would there be a scenario where that light armor could cost just as much, but actually be worth it? And I didn't see, you know, that, and that was kind of my main issue. And so, tinfoil hat moment, I was like, what if they were actually testing this stuff on there? God forbid a testing in the tech test, right? And they got a lot of information on that. They did say, you know, they're going to have more weapons and things like that. I obviously hope they will fix the idea of being able to do a snap hook in your safe pocket, which was ridiculous. I know there's a lot of people who don't particularly care for the snap hook period in the game. I disagree. I think it adds a good amount of variability to the movement that you can be capable. It's just too much of it makes you too much of an apex predator in the lobby by having one. And that's just, to me, I think like there's too much good with it, not enough negatives, especially the fact that you can hide it in a safe pocket. So hopefully
I think likewise for the Raider key, personally, I'd like to see that not being able to be put in the safe pocket. So that you know, it provides a lot of flexibility with extraction, and I think it should be at risk.
For sure. And I think considering that, like, when people think of this stuff, and when people think about whether or not the game is ready, they immediately think on a technical level. So, oh, it's ready. It's minimal bugs. Because all of us will say, any one of us who's played the game, who record or do content, can tell you they probably have on footage some kind of bug, right? The percentage of those bugs being game breaking, not very high, right? You know, not in this last test, right? And so people think the game is ready to think of that kind of way. But it's also, is it ready in terms of the amount of quests that they have available, the amount of content, the amount of guns that they have available? Is the economy in a good place? Is the weapon balance in a good place? It's just one of those things where in the UI, whether or not that's going to be as significant as some people think it's going to be, like Rockhound, I remember you brought that up, and I was like, you're right. That was kind of clunky. I kept going back and forth, pressing tab and this and that and the other. I'm like, that could be better. And I'm thinking, like, these things matter, right? Especially if you're not the chorus, you're not the choir, so to speak, and you're seeing this game for the first time. You jump in and you're like, dude, I don't know where anything's at. I don't know what to do. I can finish these missions really quickly, or what have you. Or the weapons and the armor are not balanced. That's important. That's important stuff too, and they're gonna need some time to work that out. Plus, also, the stuff that's not ready, like you were saying, in terms of the tip of the iceberg. Maybe the stuff we've seen is the most polished stuff they have, but technically everything else just needs to get worked on in terms of just, you know, hey, we have these maps, we have them ready. Technically they work, but we need to go through them and kind of like polish them off in terms of graphics and, you know, bugs, things like that.
Exactly. And the players don't see that stuff, and it's like, so even though they're going, well, we think the game's ready, the devs would be going, well, it's not, because we've got all this other stuff we want to add to it that you haven't even seen yet. So how can you say it's ready? I was just going to add, and also that idea you had about the armor and, you know, having more variety and so on. They might come away from the tech test going, hey, there was this thing about the armor that we hadn't really thought of before, but we can see that we could actually add quite a lot to the game by adding it in now. And we've got 5 months to do it. And if it's just changing the armor up a bit, I could imagine that easily being done in 5 months.
For sure. And I think another factor as well is that I think most players who play extraction shooters have such a low bar, honestly. When people say, oh, they're only going to have 3 maps on launch, the first thing is, well, three maps is average for a launch for an extraction shooter. Yeah, what if they don't want it to be?
It looks like we have a minimum of 4 now from what I've seen in the trailer.
For sure. Like, what if they want it to be 6 or 7? They're like, you know what? It's not good enough for us. We're going to shoot for that. And standards, in terms of like previous standards, be damned, because we thought those standards were low to begin with.
I thought there was a snow level in one of the previous trailers, which, you know, that could help with variety a lot, right?
Yeah, we've seen in some of the cinematics, we've definitely seen snow areas hinted at for sure. But it might be a later map, perhaps, you know, that comes in the first major update once the game's released. But if you think about adding the night raids in, so we have the 3 maps we had already, plus what has been shown, which to me looks probably like a Northern Italy map. And then if each of them have night raids, well, essentially you've got kind of 8 maps in total, or 4 plus 4 variations at least. I don't know. Do you guys feel like that's enough?
Well, I personally do, but I was kind of more making the point of that maybe the devs don't think that's enough, right? And
Yep.
that's kind of a fair thing in terms of saying, hey, we have really high standards, and so we're going to hold ourselves to those standards, even if maybe you're kind of ready to play an early access version of our game. We're not willing to give you one, right? And so like that's disappointing. That's frustrating from a player's perspective, but like I can get behind that. I can really respect that. You know what? When it's done, it's done.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like players have one bar and the devs have another, and we don't get to see the devs one.
Yeah. I do have a question about the night levels. Do you like, Rockhoundblack, I play a lot of the finals. There's night versions of those maps. I would never in a million years say that the night version of Sis Horizon feels different than the day version of Sis Horizon. Did you guys feel that the nighttime versions of those levels were different enough to provide actual, practical differences?
I wouldn't call it a new map as a result, but I would say that the difference was enough that you really recognize that there was a variation. So it's certainly more than the difference between the night and day versions of the finals maps, which is pretty subtle.
Right.
It's somewhere, for me, it's somewhere in between being the same map and a different map.
Okay, that's good to hear.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it changes the vibe. I agree completely with Rock, or what was Mr. Hound would say, or Mr. Black would say. And I would add on to the fact that I think if people were using that as this means they have 6 maps on launch because they have a night version of their 3 maps. Like that's kind of cheesing the numbers a little bit. I think if the developer were to go around and say, yeah, we're releasing with 8 maps, but in reality it's 4 plus the nighttime, I'm like, you're kind of pushing the.
Yeah, I agree.
You're kind of pushing that.
Yeah,
but
I don't think you could market that. Yeah, for sure. I don't think you'd want to try and market that. But I think players would be satisfied that with 4 or 5 maps plus all the variations at launch, I feel like that's quite a good selection.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm with you. It did sound like I did hear one person commenting that he felt like the 3 levels that were in the tech test were actually smaller than he hoped for. Did you guys feel that way? Let's go with Gecko.
No, not at all. Actually, I think it was quite the opposite.
Okay.
A lot of the maps are deceptively large. Like if you just look at it from like a 2D, 30,000 foot perspective, right? The maps will seem small, but there's so many layers to these maps in terms of like, just take the northern part of Dam, for example. Like there's that surface area where the extract is at, and you have all these little power station type thing. You have the one, I can't remember the name of the building, but it's like the building we have a couple quests on. It's kind of right there, but there's that, and then there's like a layer of tunnels underneath that. That's a whole other like play section as well. And then there's even there's tunnels that go through the dam on the lower end. It's just that's an example.
So they're dense.
Like they're dense, and also at the same time, a lot of people didn't realize that when you look at the start port maps, right? A lot of times for your sake, in terms of boxes, when you see the content that's being put out for the start port map, you see this huge open area surrounding the main launch tower in the middle, right?
Yeah.
There's a tunnel network underneath that.
So I'm not seeing the whole thing. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even maps. So again, on Spaceport, not only that tunnel area, but did you ever get into the bunker?
Yeah.
That's near Departures building, I think it was, sort of out in the open.
Yeah, not in this test, but I got into it the last test, and it basically, you know what I know enough between the two that what changed and what didn't. But I know when I saw that they moved it, that they put it where they did it, I thought that was brilliant, because now you have this much more just dense type of terrain that's all in like one place that makes the map seem that much bigger.
And and that bunker was like maybe 3.5 levels or something. It was a big bunker.
Huge.
So I feel like the maps are adequate in size. I think Shy even said on Clean Stream that they're about 2. I work in metric, but about 2 kilometers by 1.5, something like that, which is a pretty big area. I felt like they were adequate in size.
Okay. I guess I try to think about that in terms of like the Fortnite map, and obviously they're smaller than that, but that's fine. That's fine
for sure. But also comes down to like what's in the map, because it's not just a walking simulator where you just go from point A to point B. It's like, how long can I press W for, and that legitimizes the map, as opposed to there's like a single building that has all these nooks and crannies, all of these locked doors that you can kind of eventually open to, all these tactical positions. that can be done just in the one building. So you can have the same fight in just the one building over and over and over again, and it changes equal time, and then multiply that over the course of the map.
And also the looting time that's required. So, looting does take time. So the maps can't be too large because a lot of your time is taken up searching things.
Okay. No, that's good to hear. Guys, before we move on, I have one more positive spin on this bad news, the October 30th bad news. And I'm actually embarrassed to ask it, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Jeff Keighley holds a Game of the Year award show at the end of the year. I feel like you launch on October 30th. I think voting is like near the mid to the end of November. Arc Raiders is smack dab in the middle of the voting period for Game of the Year. Do we see this game potentially kind of getting nominated for these in a lot of these outlets or for the Keighley Game Awards? What do you think, Rockhoundblack?
Oh, I don't know if I have enough knowledge around what contributes to a game being considered for Game of the Year. It certainly looks like it's going to be an amazing game. And in my view, I could imagine it being nominated for it. Whether it's worthy of winning Game of the Year, I don't think I could judge that. Okay.
Gecko, what about you? Is this a useless question?
No. I think it is an interesting question because my knowledge on it is not big. I think I'll admit the same thing to Rockhoundblack in terms of just not knowing what kind of goes criterion to that. I do normally when I kind of peek my head around those kind of circles, I do notice a lot of those happen to be not strictly PvP games.
Right, they're single player, yeah.
Right, and so I feel like the crowd that typically votes for that stuff are not really going to be honing in on Arc Raiders because of that. But then again, if we have to like rely on the likes of IGN to kind of like give us what we think about what we should think about games, I'm okay with not having Game of the Year with Arc Raiders because what's the old saying is I don't care about your booze, I've seen what makes you cheer.
Okay. I guess I also think of I don't know if you guys know this, but Led Zeppelin, their first few albums were ridiculed by critics, right? I don't know if the year the Led Zeppelin one came out, a Hall & Oates album might have won a bunch of awards for album of the year. But if you look at it in retrospect, like Led Zeppelin 1, Led Zeppelin 2, those kind of changed the music industry. And I kind of get that feeling with this game. It's like, Clair Obscur 33 or some other single player game might win a Game of the Year award, but it's like this game to me feels like something that's going to be like around 5, 6, 7 years from now. Whereas a lot of those, the Game of the Year winners are kind of like flash in the pan types. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with this though. You know what I mean? I don't know. You guys have it. Rockhound, do you have anything to say to that?
I think there's, you can kind of view it in two takes. Like, let's use the finals as an example. So, as far as the players go, we know the finals had a massive start and then kind of dropped off a bit, and it's kind of got this base players. And you wouldn't say relative to some other shooters that it's a massive game, but it's just kind of sitting in the middle, perhaps. And then the flip side is that even though the players might say, hey, it's not, like Game of the Year worthy, there'll be development studios that are looking at it and going, that server-side movement, we need to start picking up that as something that we incorporate because we see it as having huge value for what we want to do down the track. And so it's not just about what the players see in a game, it's also about what other studios see and take away from it as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like your Led Zeppelin example where like they may not win the award, but they'll shift the conversation appropriately to making an impact
for other artists. That's right, exactly. Yeah.
And I couldn't name you a Hall & Oates song. I couldn't do it.
And you can view it this way, like if we go with that same metaphor or analogy, I should say, like without Led Zeppelin turning up, you could say there would be no Nirvana because Dave Grohl wouldn't hit the drums as hard, right? And then you could take that step, and without Nirvana, there wouldn't have been whatever the next one is down the track, right?
Right.
They all contribute to each other. So there will be games that come along that are going to be influenced by Arc Raiders in the finals, and we might not recognize it immediately, but it'll certainly make a difference to the gaming industry.
For sure. I mean, like same thing for everything that I say that I'm not a particular fan of when it comes to like what Tarkov is as a game. I have to 100% recognize that Arc Raiders would not exist without Tarkov.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys, we got to shift gears because we're approaching the end. I have looked at both of your channels, Rockhoundblack and Gecko Frontier. It seems like we all kind of gravitate towards the same types of games, but I wanted to get both of your like, what are you looking forward to outside of Arc Raiders? What is there a game between now and then that's kind of gonna, I said previously there's a Lifeboat game. Gecko, is there a Lifeboat game for you that you're kind of like, all right, Arc Raiders is coming out in October. This game's gonna get me there.
I mean, there's a bunch of games that I was kind of basically, shifting to my permanent Steam library that would never get played, so I wouldn't bother, buying them or looking into them because I thought Arc Raiders would kind of be around. Then I'm not looking at, hey, now I get to actually play you guys. I can actually, I get to do that. And so, I'm thinking maybe there's Dune Awakening that's kind of out. It's a similar vibe type game. I'm not sure if people are into it or not, but that's a thing. I know Wildgate has their beta coming up on the 9th, so I'm going to be having some fun with that. I know Pioneer has a demo being opened up sometime this month, so that's going to be an interesting game to finally get my hands on it.
What is Pioneer? What is Pioneer?
Pioneer, I think of it like a Russian rustic Fallout-ish type Destiny type thing, but only has a PvP involved as well. We don't know a lot. There's decent amount of content out there already, but I'd prefer to get my hands on it before I really start labeling it out.
All right, interesting.
So
I'll
there's
check that out.
I feel like if you were into Arc Raiders, Pioneer might be up your alley, honestly. Yeah. And then there is also completely different shift in terms of type of game type would be Broken Arrow, which is a realistic style RTS game. I know that's releasing on the 19th. Okay. So that's definitely been on my radar for a while. So that might be interesting to play as well.
All these games I have to check out because our tastes are aligned so closely. Rockhoundblack, what about you?
Yeah, so from the Game Awards, I kind of gave the Game Awards about a 6 as far as out of 10. I thought some of it wasn't so great, but there were a couple of games in there that I really liked the look of, and one especially was The Cube, yes. Which is kind of this almost open world shooter that is kind of set on a world that's on a Rubik's Cube, which changes, like moves around the entire map during the game. That looked really interesting concept. That's, I presume, going to come out next year, or it's a way down the track. So that won't fill the gap between now and when Arc Raiders comes out. I'll still be playing the finals. I really enjoy it, even though it's quite different from what Arc Raiders is going to be like. And probably just jumping into a bunch of open world games. Like yesterday, for a couple of hours, I jumped into Armory Forger, which is doing really well at the moment. It's got lots of full servers. There's some really good modding that's been done on that. So yeah, probably filling in the time by jumping into a few open world style shooters.
Rockhoundblack, let me ask you this question because I put a ton of hours into the finals, and only recently have I started playing with the same two people. So 99% of my time with the finals is solo queuing. I'm telling you, that game reaches another level if you kind of actually play consistently with two other people. Have you done that?
I have friends that I play with regularly. And so, yeah, we definitely play a lot better than if I tend to play with randoms. But every now and then you'll get two good randoms, or they might be buddies that are playing together without a third. And you do have those moments.
Now you're the random.
Yeah, I'm the random. But if you all kind of just happen to think the same way, you can have some amazing strategies with playing with people you don't know. But I think overall, playing with people you do know tends to be better.
Oh, for sure. I just think it's fascinating when you start realizing, like, oh, this player plays like a coward. He's going to run in this scenario. So you adjust based on like reputation. I just think that's like a fascinating concept that you really identify when you play the finals, for sure, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think also Arc Raiders, I think, would be absolutely the same as well. If you end up teaming up with people you're going to play a whole lot better. Like I quite often play with DeMeister, who runs the Discord that I hang out on, and he's got almost 6,000 hours in Tarkov, and so he is super good at knowing when to flank, and he'll often take the lead and go, hey, let's go left because I think these guys are going to move to a certain location, and he's so often right. And it just shows the experience of having that much time in a game like Tarkov.
Right.
For sure.
Right. I love that.
And I think, honestly, for anyone, for listening and like if they have buddies that are playing, like if there are games that are free coming out, you get a chance to check. Like Wildgate is a great example. It's not the same as Arc Raiders, but especially if you're in a community that is kind of come around Arc Raiders and you're still kind of waiting, I would reach out and play with those people in a different game, because the vibe you start getting from each other and getting used to each other playing games will definitely pay off when you're playing Arc Raiders eventually. One of the best examples would be myself and my son. When we play, it's like we've been playing the cycle for a literal year straight. At that point, we got so used to each other in the extraction environment to the point where when we played Arc Raiders, we pretty much know we don't have to communicate anymore for a lot of things that we do. We do anyways. It's just that to kind of give each other the heads up, but it's one of those things where you can just know we vibe. And so you can truly create that by playing with people consistently, even if it's not the game that you want to be playing, aka Arc Raiders.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up Wildgate, because I see a ton of similarities between Wildgate and the finals, like very team oriented, very PvP focused. So it's interesting that you bring that up.
I've certainly noticed playing the finals a lot that my just gunplay ability has improved a lot. I remember jumping back into Battlefield for a couple of rounds, which I hadn't played for a long time, and I could immediately tell that I was a lot better in Battlefield than I was prior to playing the finals.
Oh, they probably play pretty similarly, right, in terms of feel?
Yeah. I think if you play like medium build, especially, with an AK or something like that, they're very similar.
Right.
Oh, but also depends on your mindset too. You're not the same person. Like when I started playing the cycle, it was my very first extraction shooter, and so your mindset when you're playing your very first extraction shooter changes dramatically after, like, say, a year of playing several wipes. Like you get way more aggressive. You're way more comfortable taking those risks, because it's the gear is easy come easy go at that point. And so going into every new extraction shooter now, it's a complete night and day difference in terms of the way I approach that versus the way I approach the cycle for the majority of the time that I played it. So that's why, with Arc Raiders, it's like, all right, well, let's just jump in like I'm an old veteran, because it's like, well, there's a lot.
Yeah,
and I noticed that as well. As I was saying, playing with DeMeister with so many hours in Tarkov, I was learning a lot from him immediately. It was so helpful.
But apparently the genre is saturated, folks.
Yeah.
The extraction genre is saturated.
Super saturated. Super.
Yeah. Tarkov is the be-all and all.
Here's a question: like, why do you think people think that?
I have a strong opinion.
I have a strong opinion on that one too.
Go,
boss.
You go.
I talk too much at the beginning. You can go first.
I think the people saying the extraction shooter genre, and I'm dead serious when I say this, is saturated. I think they're afraid of the genre blowing up, because you get I think when you go online, a ton of the discourse is from people who prefer single player games. So when they see something bubbling over here in this PvP centric area, I feel like they're just like, it's saturated. Stop making these games. Let's put cold water on it before it blows up. Gecko, am I onto something there?
I partially I do agree that a lot of the people saying that it's saturated, it's coming from a place of ignorance, because it's from people who don't play these games, right? Because they'll get into situations where they're like, well, Helldivers is extraction game because you extract, and I'm just like, no, you have to extract and you have to have loot that you take with you. Well, Helldivers has loot in there; those are materials, whatever it is, you can extract with them. Yeah, but you also don't lose anything when you die, right?
Yeah.
But you drop the loot that you picked up, yes, but it wasn't what you brought in, and so a lot of the games now, like great examples would be like Wildgate, like Steel Hunters, that add an extract mechanic, but they're just BRs, right? And there's nothing wrong with a BR inherently. It's just that when you say the word extract, you're like, well, cool. Everybody who doesn't play extract games immediately labels it as an extract game. And so I think there's a level of, and you're not wrong in terms of the ignorance in that regard. And I think a big chunk of that is coming from a PvE crowd.
Yeah.
And I can kind of back this up. And in fact, this is actually tells you the story of kind of how Gecko and I first got in touch. So I decided that I wanted to make a video about extraction shooters, because I think Arc Raiders had already announced that they were moving to that at this point. And so I just kind of posted on my channel, hey, give me extraction shooters you'd like to be included in the list. And so I was just asking the community. I came up with a list of 27 games, right, that I included in the list of what I considered to be extraction shooters based on what my community had told me.
Mm-hmm.
And Gecko commented on my video saying, "Hey, this list is kind of hard to take serious." Would you think that would be a fair quote from you,
Yeah,
Gecko?
not my proudest moment. I did come in a little harsh on that particular comment, but like more or less.
But the key thing is, it really made me think, and I thought, okay, here's someone who's really thinking about what qualifies as an extraction shooter, and I was like, I want to take this guy seriously, even though my immediate reaction was I don't necessarily agree. Eventually, I was like, actually, I need to figure this out for myself. What qualifies as an extraction shooter? And watching Gecko's videos, I was like, okay, now I understand it a bit better. That not only do you take loot in, but you must have to be able to lose it, and the value of loot must be high, and you must be able to work with your loot out of the game as well, right?
Yeah. I think the best examples, like 3 games I can give that look remarkably similar on a superficial level, in terms of like their play style, but they have massive differences because how they interact with loot between games is dramatic, right? So here are the 3 games. There's Wildgate, Sea of Thieves, and Sand.
Yeah.
Right? All 3 of them are like multiple players operating a single vehicle in like a semi-open world, right? One has absolutely 0 loot interaction outside of a match. 0. 100% 0. It's a BR. That's Wildgate. The other has achievements and gold that you can like work up in terms of the economy, but you don't really lose anything. That's Sea of Thieves. Then you have Sand, which is 100%, loot economy. Everything you have, you bring in, you up to and including your actual walker can be lost on death. Right,
100%.
So
yeah.
dramatically, these all on the face value, these games have a lot in common in terms of their feel, the kind of like gameplay that it's kind of encouraging, but the way loot interacts changes their appeal dramatically. And I think those 3 examples are great to be like, what's an extraction shooter and what's not.
Yeah.
And I think Rockhound. So you compile a list of 27 extraction shooters, and it kind of, a lot of people say, all right, there's 27 of them out there, therefore the market is like maybe saturated. But if 20,
sorry,
just
to clarify that, so my list had 27 games in it, but going back to it now, they're not all extraction shooters. And recently, I made a video that ended up with like, I don't know, we had 6 or 7 in total, I think it was.
Okay, but I guess when you talk to someone who's like the extraction shooter genre is a saturated market, then let's say they list 10 or 15 of them. Then if 10 or 15 is the paradigm at which you work, then every genre known to man is a saturated genre, right? It's like, oh, there's 15 extraction shooters. Well, there's 15 of every type of game, on Earth. So
I guess saturation also relates to the size of the audience and
the market. That's true.
That's right. And extraction shooters are never going to have, unlikely at the stage to have the same volume of audience as just a general shooter like Battlefield or something like that. Yeah. But bring a game like Arc Raiders along, that audience could change, and maybe that's part of the fear you were talking about before, is that people are like, I don't enjoy an extraction shooter, and I'm afraid that they'll actually blow up and become kind of the shooter standard.
Right.
For sure. And they see Arc Raiders as kind of as a warning sign to that, because in their mind, this game was a PvE only game, and then suddenly it became a PvP game. And so that's a warning sign for them. Hey, we need to like really, really push against this, because we don't want all these other PvE games that we want to be turned into PvP games. And that's a fair criticism, like just to take their side for just a second. It's like me saying, well, you want to play a co-op game, and I was like, well, we don't have that many co-op games. I'm playing, Space Marine. Like, well, if you're playing Space Marine 2 and you're playing the PvE version of it, right? It's like we don't have hardly any other options for co-op games. Well, there's a Starship Trooper co-op game. You can play 16 players. Yeah. You can do all that. Yeah, but I don't want that kind of co-op game. It's like, I understand that.
I know it.
Like I understand that feeling. So it's like, but you can't automatically say, well, there's like 5 milsim extraction games, therefore we have 5 options to go. I don't want to play a milsim extraction game though.
Yeah, and I think people sort of easily missed the point where the Embark team said that there was always going to be PvP in
100%.
Arc Raiders. It just wasn't front of line, so to speak.
Right, that's more me
so
giving the
that-
devil its due,
Yeah. Well, guys, other than my turtles comment from earlier in the podcast, I thought all three of us did pretty well. I think we did well. I think we had, we turned this bad situation into a positive situation. I think we end the show and then, we go to cryo sleep. We put ourselves in, till October 30th.
See
right?
you guys on October 29th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
it is a bit like that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's great we've got the date to look forward to. So I guess we just hold our breath for 5 months.
Yeah, long countdown, but at least we know for sure it's not a wiggle room. Whereas like before, it'd be a year and a half of not playing or 6 months of not playing and knowing nothing. Now we know for sure it's coming out.